You can almost hear that music in your head, can't you? Da-dum, da-dum. It's the sound of the ocean's most legendary predator. For decades, we've been totally captivated and, let's be honest, a little terrified by the great white shark. And you can see pretty much every other marvel of the deep in an aquarium, but the true star of the show? Always missing. So let's dive into this. Why can't you see a great white shark behind glass? I mean, it's a really good question when you think about it. There are something like 400 species of sharks out there. You can go to an aquarium and see all kinds of them, sand tigers, zebra sharks, and they're doing just fine. But the one shark everybody knows, the one that Hollywood made into a superstar, is just not there. What is it that makes the great white so incredibly different? Well, to understand why this animal can't be contained, you first have to understand the animal itself. We need to get a clear picture of what makes the great white the undisputed king of the ocean. Now, you might be surprised to hear that the great white isn't actually the biggest shark in the sea. Nope, that title goes to these gentle giants, the whale shark and the basking shark, which are basically just massive filter feeders. But when it comes to raw, predatory power, the great white is in a league of its own. It is the true apex predator of the seas. Okay, let's just try to wrap our heads around the scale we're dealing with here. The largest great white ever officially recorded was a female, and she was over 6 meters long, weighing a mind-boggling 1,950 kilograms. That is over 4,300 pounds. This is a creature of just immense, immense power. And to put their size in perspective, your average male is around 4 meters long, but the females, they're the true giants, often pushing close to 5 meters. You know, these aren't just stats on a page. They represent an animal that is perfectly, and I mean perfectly, evolved to hunt and rule a vast open territory. So, with an animal this magnificent, it is absolutely no surprise that people have desperately wanted to see one up close. And that desire kicked off a whole century-long saga of trying to put one on display, a saga defined almost entirely by failure. And this wasn't just some casual wish. For any major aquarium, successfully keeping a great white alive was the ultimate prize. It was the holy grail. It meant you were the best. It meant prestige and a mastery over the ocean's greatest mysteries. The ambition was just enormous. And this timeline, wow, it really shows you just how challenging this whole thing has been. The first big attempt was way back in 1955, and it basically set a tragic pattern for decades to come. One famous aquarium after another tried and failed, with these sharks surviving for shockingly short periods of time, sometimes just a few hours. Let's get into the specifics. That very first attempt in 1955 at Maryland, the shark didn't even make it a full day. Before 1980, there were 11 major attempts by some of the most famous aquariums in the world. Every single one of them lasted less than 10 days. And here's the really heartbreaking detail. With only one exception, the sharks just refused to eat. They would literally starve themselves to death. Then, in 1981, it looked like SeaWorld San Diego might have broken the curse. They managed to keep a great white alive for a record-setting 16 days, and at the time, this was seen as a huge achievement. But in the end, the result was exactly the same. The shark died. The real breakthrough, the one that changed everything, didn't happen for decades. It wasn't until 2004 that the Monterey Bay Aquarium did what nobody else could. They successfully kept a young female great white, not for days, but for 198 days. It was a massive success. They even went on to do it again with 6 other young sharks, releasing them back into the wild as they got bigger. Okay, so this is the real turning point in the story. Monterey Bay cracked the code. They achieved the dream. And then, in 2011, they just stopped the program. Completely. Which leads to the big question. If they were so successful, why on earth would they walk away from it all? The answer, it turns out, has nothing to do with the size of the tank or the engineering. It has everything to do with the biology of the shark. We're about to get into the fundamental reason why, no matter how big the enclosure is, a cage is still a cage. This right here is the single most important thing to understand about a great white. They are literally built for perpetual motion. They're what scientists call obligate ram ventilators, which is just a fancy way of saying they have to constantly swim forward to push water over their gills so they can breathe. If they stop swimming, they die. It's that simple. And they don't just swim, they roam. In the wild, a great white swims an average of 100 kilometers, that's about 62 miles, every single day. Just think about that for a second. Even the biggest, fanciest, multi-million-gallon tank in the entire world is to them nothing more than a tiny, frustrating little box. For an animal that is hardwired to cross entire oceans, captivity is pure psychological torture. It isn't a home, it's solitary confinement. They get so stressed and disoriented that they injure themselves by ramming into the walls. In the end, it's the environment itself that kills them. And knowing all this brings us to the modern era and to the ethical fallout from our obsession. Because even with all this knowledge, the attempts didn't stop. And that has led to some recent tragedies and even some really bizarre ambitions. Yeah, as recently as January 2016, a 3.5-meter male was caught in a net off the coast of Japan. The world-renowned Churaomi Aquarium in Okinawa decided to take it in. Now, these guys are experts with huge species like whale sharks, but it didn't matter. The great white refused to eat anything. It died in just 3 days, and the public and conservation groups were, rightly, furious. This tragic cycle of capturing a shark just for display is one thing, but what if our ambition went even further than that? What if the goal was something way more complex than just entertainment? And this really gets to the fundamental conflict, doesn't it? Our obsession drives us to possess and control these incredible animals, whether it's for a spectacle or for science. This desire can even lead to speculation that sounds like it's straight out of a movie, like these fringe allegations about attempts to literally weaponize sharks. But the very nature of the great white resists our control at every single turn, which raises some seriously tough questions about the limits of our ambition. From wanting a thrilling show to the quest for scientific knowledge, our relationship with the great white is complicated. The source material for this explainer concludes that, quote, human greed is truly endless. And whether you call it greed or just ambition, it forces us to face a powerful truth. What we want often clashes with the fundamental nature of the wild. And that leaves us with this final, really critical question. After a century of failure, stress, and death, we have to ask ourselves, just because we can capture something, does that mean we should? Or are there some forces of nature, some icons of the wild, that are just meant to be forever free?